he graduated from school, he wrote to tell her how she was the best teacher he ever had. 5 years later, he wrote to her saying, I've completed my master's degree, my medical degree, and she's still the best teacher he ever had. After that, she got a card which said, Dr. Theodore Thompson, MD, and he wrote to her saying that I've now become a practicing doctor and I'm getting married. And would you please come and give me away because my father is also now dead. And when she came up, he hugged her and said, you know, Mrs. Thompson, you're still the best teacher I ever had because you believed in me. You believed that I could still make something of my life. And you taught me a lot. So thank you, Mrs. Thompson, he said. You made such a difference. And Mrs. Thompson then said, with tears in her eyes, Teddy, you have it all wrong. You were the one who taught me that I could make a difference. I didn't know how to teach till I met you. So we just need to look at every context with every student to recognize what it is that this student can teach us about life, about struggles, about trials, about triumphs, about success, instead of our giving him a foregone notion of what success is all about. Success is not just about coming first in the Indian Administrative Service exam. It is, of course, in some ways, but it's not all about life. So then coming back very, very quickly before I wind up, I thought I should share with you that some of the things we really need to look at when we are in a college such as this is to look at what we call the operational system and the software. You know, we are always asked the hard way. How many classrooms do you have? You know, all the NAC and NIRF requirements. How many teachers? What is the quotient? How many courses? What is the attendance requirement? Ticking all those boxes. That is, I believe, the hard way. That's the minimum. If you have it, you have all those numbers. Those are the quantitative aspects of it. But there is an operational software in every college, which not many people really think about or know about. And I just wanted to, before that, share a short video about what contemporary students globally think, what they do in their minds. And this is the cohort, this is the generation that we are interacting with. And very often what's going on in their minds is not what is going on in our minds. How do we synchronize that understanding of what it is that is motivating them? It's a short video, please take a look at it and then we'll come back on it. It's called The Vision of Students. Can you put it on the whole screen? Okay, just move it forward. Just a short, it's not very long. It was made in 2008, I think. It is summarizing some of the most important characteristics of students today. How they learn, what they need to learn, their goals, and so on. we are competing against. Facebook, Twitter. This is post CBCS. Thank you. So as you've seen, these are some of the concerns, and this is what we are competing with the student of today. Because they have so many concerns that are not part of our conventional classroom, and they are impinging upon the learning process. So quickly, I'm just trying to share with you that what would be the operational system that we look at when we are talking about this new software for education in spaces such as ours, which are colleges, which are very special spaces. Now, all I'm going to suggest at the moment is that please look at these attributes, which I think we should try and recover into our systems of learning, if we can. First is that I won't go into the details. I will, because we don't have time. It should be a ruminative space. It should be a space where there is place for ideas, for the free flow of ideas, for discussion around the ideas, the space of the mind, the discussion around ideas, so that the muses of learning can come together. And it's also a space, as you said, ma'am, that we need to create some silences. And you know that in music, the best music is made in the silence between notes, where we have the time to think things through. Then it's an aspirational space, because young people come to us because they have aspirations for a better life. Education is a key to what they consider a better life. We need to be able to take note of those aspirations and see what we can do to improve the possibilities of getting them closer to those aspirations, or telling them that their aspirations and the reality are that far apart, and that is much that harder that they have to work to get there. Dialogic space. We have to be able to listen to dialogue. We are always unidirectional in our approach to communication. We speak, they listen. But we have to create a dialogic space between teachers and students, among teachers, between management and teachers, between management and students, increasingly to build ownership of a place. We have to be open to dialogue, which also means we have to listen and we have to be open to critique. We have to be able to put, as Socrates said, our own certitudes to scrutiny. Even if we are 100% sure that this is the way to solve this mathematical problem, if somebody raises a doubt, we should be able to go back to our first principles and explain why there may not be a better way. And not to say, नहीं ये prove हो चुका है, मैं बता रहा हूँ या बता रही हूँ, इसलिए तुम्हें मानना पड़ेगा. So the process of interrogation is very, very important. Then we have to have inclusive, as you said, and healing spaces. Very often, students that come to us, especially in a college like this and colleges like this, are people who have to face so many difficulties in their home. And these are not just students, even faculty. So they need a sanctuary of peace. They need a place where their inner instincts can actually flower. They need a safe and protected environment. They need a place where they are not humiliated. They need a space where they can share their uncertainties, where they can say, look, I don't know. Please help me understand, and without being judged. A non-judgmental healing space for us as well. We all carry many problems to our workspace. But what makes college a different kind of workspace is that because it's non-hierarchical, we have the ability to empathize and share with others our predilections, our problems. We're not competing with each other. It's like you may have seen geese when they travel together. They travel like this. They travel in an exaltation, the V formation. When the goose in the front of the apex becomes tired, he comes down along with another member of the exaltation. They come down and they rest, and they again join the exaltation later. Because with the thermodynamic thrust of this collectivity, they move much faster than any individual goose could have done. When you see birds in migration, they'll always be in this kind of thing. So how do we build that collaborative, shared space where our collective energies are not competing? We are succeeding without vying with each other. We have to be able to transmit that to our students as well. How do we do it? It's a big question. And so democratic, it's very, very important that our colleges become cradles of democracy. And I don't mean party politics. I don't mean DUSU elections or DUTA elections. Those are the worst forms of electoral democracy that you can see. But genuine democracy, respect for difference, for freedom of expression. They say, for example, there are 5 kinds of pluralism that any good educational space must encourage. It must encourage a plurality of disciplines, plurality of approaches within each discipline. It's not that I'm a Marxist, so aapko mera sunna hi padega. Or I'm a liberal and you have to listen to my position, otherwise I'll deduct marks. It has to have a plurality of a diversity of the student profile. It must have a diversity of the teacher profile from all over the country, from different backgrounds. And it must also have a diversity of funding sources, both public and private. Please make no mistake. The state is not going to be around to support us in higher education. It's gradually moving outside this space. So when we build our protests or whatever it is, we need to know this, that we must shore ourselves against a time when things are not going to look as comfortable as they are. It will become more and more cutting edge, more and more competitive, more contract based, more and more, I hate to use the word ad hoc teachers, but more contract based assignments, less and less promotion. So given this scenario, how do we still find meaning in our work? That it's not only, we are not a trade union, but yes, you're right, ma'am, you said that it depends on how satisfied we are. We have to be able to collectively find forms of financial sustenance. We can't say we are against privatization. Of course we are against private. But we have to be open to private sources of funding so that we can sustain ourselves. Tomorrow Sarkar says, hamare paas paisa nahi hai, as they're telling the Reserve Bank of India, you just shore you cover up for all our misdemeanors. They're telling the farmers that your minimum acquisition price will be changed. So across the board, the benefits of society are moving to a smaller and smaller group of people, and the gap will only widen. So we have to think of other mechanisms where we can find fulfillment. We cannot expect Sarkar to provide it for us till our dying day. So we have to constantly keep reinventing ourselves, and which is why I think I salute the initiatives of people like Robi Kar, who are thinking in new ways of how do we sustain, how do we grow, how do we open up our college to the wider world, even with all the difficulties. So democracy is crucial to this. If you don't have diverse points of view that can be presented, processed and identified, you're going to be foreclosed to the opportunities that come today. Then we have to have an energized and creative space, constantly creating, recreating our fundamentals, and above all, of course, a gendered space. I'm not saying that I'm not swept away by the Me Too movement, but I know about campuses where there is rampant harassment of women and sexual minorities. I know that there is rampant exploitation of research scholars by male professors. I headed or shall I say, I worked with the Saksham report of the UGC, which became the precondition for the kind of ICCs and women's development initiatives and harassment at the workplace that you needed. So whether it was access to equity, access to leave, access to childcare, access to other aspects of life without compromising on career mobility, women have been at a disadvantage because by and large there is this whole business of masculinity. So when our students come to us, we also need them to re-examine what is mardangi, what is masculinity, how can both the genders, sexes work together to create a gender just situation. I would commend you to the Saksham report, and I think you might find some interesting things there. So I will just show you a few, just 2 or 3 short, very short films and wrap it up. I had a lot more to say, highlighting how these are so important, these kind of, what I call the operational software and the ideational system that is behind our hardware is what we need to concentrate on as we fashion a new discourse for higher education collectively, together, between ourselves, amongst ourselves, between us and our students. So the first film I'd like to show you is something called the Piper movie. Is Piper coming up first? It's about collaboration. How when you leave aside mistrust and you begin to develop trust as a community amongst yourselves, how a lot of interesting things can happen. It's a small animation film. We decided in the beginning that we'll all be children today. So let's be little children for a while. This is about interactive and collaborative spaces. How do we build collaboration? How do we trust and how do we collaborate? And how can we change the situation? I'll only take 10 more minutes before we wind up. This is our ability to understand and be curious about other people's concerns and where they are coming from, which makes them exhibit their behavior in a particular way. To be able to go below the surface of things and get new perspective. Allows us to open up the doors of collaboration. Pedagogy of mutuality. Okay. That's the end. Now we go on to pedagogy, which is not domesticating but liberating, where we don't look at the classroom only as these four walls. So I'm just going to ask you to just, we need to be open to the uneven rhythms of learning, because learning means the Freudians having it out with the Jungians, the liberals with the Marxists, the Gandhians with the Ambedkarites. So it's the ability to open ourselves to the different rhythms, but above all to recognize that there is something known as the learning commons, that it is not a space of exclusion or only we know this. It's a commons to which we can always dip into. And I just want you to guess this location. Where do you think this might be? What do you think this might be? Where do you think this is actually? Where do you think this place was? I'm not talking with the country. Just.
It's in a workplace, office.
Chat room. Study room. Chatting room.
Do you know this is the new library? It's a library where young people are getting together to do a project together. Now this is antithetical to everything we imagine a library to be. Because for us a library is a straight set of tables, individual laptops, cut off like a factory floor from each other, because for us that is the notion of a modern library. But this is what a library where the learning commons is about sharing ideas, which is student-centric is. So that's it. Now can we go to the glass divide? When we talk about an inclusive space, I just want us to just take a look at this. When we talk about inclusive spaces, do we make our students understand that there's a whole world out there that doesn't have the privileges of our education? This is a young boy looking into a restaurant where two young people are. And many of us are aware of the chotus in our lives, the chotus who are serving us in dhabas, the little chotus who work in our house, where the young boy of the house who's about 13 or 14, well built and fed on cheese and pastries, has to go to the bus stop, and little chotu will carry his box and take him to the bus stop. This young lad will climb the bus, and chotu will come back to his chores, and in his mind will go on, Baba has gone to school. I wish I could go to school. I wish I could be in that school. I wonder what happens in that school. And gradually over the years, resentment of exclusion builds in him. If we are really in the pedagogical space, we have to open our hearts and minds to this, not just live in India, but also know what's happening in Bharat and what is actually going on the moment we exclude large sections of our population. So how do we connect town and gown? How do we connect the ivory tower with the movements of change, whether it is the RTI movement, whether it is the Chipko Andolan, whether it is the Narmada Bachao, which it is the Gas Peedit Malla Andolan, any number of people's movements, whether it is the farmers' movements now, any number of movements that are really the laboratory of our learning. Do we bring that into our classroom? Will we ever bring, when we are talking about sociology or political science, will we bring a Kisan into our classroom and tell him to explain to our students कि what is the Rabi crop, what is the Kharif crop, कैसे होता है, कहाँ बेचते हो, किस मंडी में जाते हो, पैसे कैसे जुगाड़ते हो, कैसा होता है? That will be a learning which they will remember and they will go and research on it. It's another thing to get Jagdish Bhagwati's book or Sai Ram's book or Sainath's book or whatever. But that experience, are we connecting them? Is town and gown meeting or not? Or are we staying in this ivory tower? So that's the class divide. Then, to be aware of Chotu stories, I won't go to inclusive and healing space because I think it will take time and I need to. I just want to show you a picture that made waves. I think this was this photo was taken probably 46 years ago. It is during the Vietnam War. And it was a picture that captured the imagination of the whole world and began to realize the ravages of bombing and the war.
Anyone
Just
who
can we
lived
move
through the
this?
Vietnam
Just
War.
move to the picture. No, not this, the photograph.
Also there that day, that little girl.
This is the girl. This napalm bomb. Can you go back and hold that, please?
Visited upon
This
an innocent
picture
child.
is about this girl who ran from the bombing, and later about the story of the photographer who saved her. And she was burnt, completely burnt. And her journey 56 years later, how she recovered and how she overcame her trials and how she then migrated, how she survived. But it's about recognizing the ravages of narrow nationalism and looking at the world as a borderless world of humanity. How can we build peace? When we are looking at our classrooms, it's a potential space for us to cultivate ideas about peace. Looking at a borderless world. When we are talking about ecology and environment, I was so happy that that touched everybody. But environment doesn't know boundaries. The ozone layer depleted here has something to do with what's happening in other parts of the world. It doesn't divide us geographically. We are all connected. So the moment we recognize that we are all connected in some way or the other, that if you pluck a flower, you disturb a star, that you can hold infinity in the palm of your hand, but you also have to connect with many worlds simultaneously. That whatever you do here today has repercussions for many worlds globally. Many people are affected by it. That kind of interconnection, if we can bring into our classroom, that would be a thing well served. Now I will quickly go. This is the lady 56 years later who survived that bomb, but not many people survived it. And so can we talk about the fact when we are saying about nationalism and chauvinism and buying armaments and buying guns and buying more bombs because we have enemies here and we have enemies there, can we somehow build a change in that rhetoric? Because those are usually confined to governments wanting to win or lose. People always lose wars. Governments win wars, people always lose. So can we really think of creating classrooms as an arena of peace? How do we do that? The moment we start planting the ideas of non-violence in everything that we do in the classroom. The way we speak, is it non-violent? The way we think, is it non-violent? Can we be conscious of the violence that we perpetuate and we disseminate and so on? Now I will stop. I would just want to show you one rather funny, short, very, very short. No, not very short. It's about engendering. We always talk about this thing about, this whole movement of women. They're so obsessed with their freedom and so on and so forth. लड़की ने इशारा किया था इसीलिए तो we went forward and made friends with her. After all, she was also willing. After all, she was dressed so badly, so it was a tacit invitation for us to kind of take her seriously or not seriously. So this whole notion of consent, what is consent? We need to tell our students, because we are in a multi sex environment where we are looking at young people who are for the first time coming out of smaller towns and smaller rural spaces into a large cosmopolitan space and experiencing their sexuality for the first time and also interacting with the other sex freely in a democratic environment. So how are we to explain to them that what is consent? Many of you may have seen that film called Pink. I don't know if you have. So it says that, if a woman says no, it's no. No matter what she may have done before or after that. So for us to be able to sensitize people that when we are looking at a classroom, we're also creating an engendered space for our society. We have to be deeply conscious of it. I'll end with this because it's a little funny, because we've been talking very serious stuff today. So this is about consent. I'd like you to watch it. Consent, T-consent.
If you're still struggling with consent, just imagine instead of initiating sex, you're making them a cup of tea. You say, hey, would you like a cup of tea? And they go, oh my God, I would love a cup of tea. Thank you. Then you know they want a cup of tea. If you say, hey, would you like a cup of tea? And they're like, I'm not really sure. then you could make them a cup of tea, or not, but be aware they might not drink it. And if they don't drink it, then, and this is the important part, don't make them drink it. Just because you made it doesn't mean you are entitled to watch them drink it. And if they say no thank you, then don't make them tea at all. Just don't make them tea. Don't make them drink tea. Don't get annoyed at them for not wanting tea. They just don't want tea, okay? They might say, yes, please, that's kind of you. And then when the tea arrives, they actually don't want the tea at all. Sure, that's kind of annoying as you've gone to all the effort of making the tea, but they remain under no obligation to drink the tea. They did want tea, now they don't. Some people change their mind in the time that it takes to boil the kettle, brew the tea, and add the milk. And it's okay for people to change their mind. And you are still not entitled to watch them drink it. And if they're unconscious, don't make them tea. Unconscious people don't want tea. And they can't answer the question, do you want tea? Because they're unconscious. Okay, maybe they were conscious when you asked them if they wanted tea. And they said yes. But in the time it took you to boil the kettle, brew the tea, and add the milk, they are now unconscious. You should just put the tea down. Make sure the unconscious person is safe. And this is the important part again. Don't make them drink the tea. They said yes then, sure, but unconscious people don't want tea. If someone said yes to tea, started drinking it, and then passed out before they finished it, don't keep on pouring it down their throat. Take the tea away. Make sure they're safe, because unconscious people don't want tea. Trust me on this. If someone said yes to tea around your house last Saturday, that doesn't mean they want you to make them tea all the time. They don't want you to come around to their place unexpectedly and make them tea and force them to drink it going, but you wanted tea last week. Or to wake up to find you pouring tea down their throat going, but you wanted tea last night. If you can understand how completely ludicrous it is to force people to have tea when they don't want tea, and you're able to understand when people don't want tea, then how hard is it to understand it when it comes to sex? Whether it's tea or sex, consent is everything. And on that note, I'm going to go make myself a cup of tea.
Thank you. I just want to also run some aphorisms. I just would like to leave you people with the thought. We started with the mission statement, and we said how we wanted every day to rescript the places we are inhabiting, how we want to change them. It's sometimes useful to evolve mantras. You know, we all have our little mantras, we do them wherever. We also hear when we go, we have mottos, and all those mottos are either taken from the Upanishads or from the Bible, and very few of them have relevance to what. Sometimes you will see a board that says, speak the truth, Gandhiji. You know, as though it's some great revelation that's coming to us. But you know, so the interesting thing is for us, when we go back to our spaces of work, to create aphorisms which work for our environment. These are some of the aphorisms that we developed while we developed in LSR. I'm not suggesting that these will be appropriate for every place, but just to get a flavor, we developed these. So it would be a good exercise when you go back to please develop some aphorisms for your own institution. But I really want to express my deep gratitude to all of you for having been so patient and sat through this whole exercise. I know what it's like after lunch, and you've been more than kind to me. And I apologize if I've tried your patience. I left out a lot of stuff that I wanted to say, but hopefully we will meet in this lifetime soon again. Thank you very, very much. Thank you.
We can formally thank Professor Gopinath for reminding us of the possibilities that exist in the higher education. Though we are faced with innumerable challenges these days, we are bogged down by rules, regulations, confusions, chaos that is happening in these turbulent times. But still, I know that most of us are constrained and limited by infrastructural problems and rules and regulations and guidelines. But I'm sure I can say for everyone. one that when we enter the class, we are fulfilling all the roles. We are mentors, we are co-travelers, we are facilitators, we are their friends. We leave everything behind. We might be frustrated with the administration, we might be frustrated with all kinds of things happening in our professional and personal lives, but we all, I know, I'm sure, we all leave that behind when we enter the class. We forget it, and we are re-energized to face the day. That is true for everyone who's sitting here, and thank you so much for telling us the power to impact that this profession has given us, that this is the only profession that has that power, and we are the custodians of that power, and we need to exercise, and we are exercising it every day when we are meeting our students, when we are telling them everything without even uttering a word. They observe us, they learn from us, they learn from our mannerism, from what we say, what we don't say. Thank you so much for